There have been a huge amount of Dragon Ball games released in the past decades, and as a Dragon Ball fan, I'm looking forward to the action RPG Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, which will be released this January. This is also the ideal time to take a look at the top 10 Dragon Ball games released in the past 20 years. But as usual, this is not simply my personal list, but a subjective top 10, based on the Metacritic scores as the basis for the placements. Especially since the anime community is very lovely when it comes to ratings, I am taking the ratio for the final score as 40% Metacritic and 60% the user score, which I multiply by 10 to have a good 2-digit rating at the end. If there is a tie in the end rating, the game with the better user rating will get the highest spot on the list. I'm also not considering different placements for sequels of a franchise, but only the best of them will have a dedicated spot. I'm looking forward to read your top Dragon Ball games in the comments, and if you like this video, feel free to leave a thumbs up. With all the explanations out of the way, let's start with number 10.
10.
Dragon Ball Z Burst Limit was released in June 2008 as the first new console-gen Dragon Ball game for the PS3 and Xbox 360. Developed by DIMS in collaboration with Bandai Namco and published by Atari, the fighting game achieves the 10th rank in this list with a Metacritic score of 71, a user score of 73, and therefore a final rating of 72.2. Burst Limit only followed the Dragon Ball Z story from the beginning of the Saiyan saga until the end of the Cell saga. It offered 6 different game modes, including an online mode, and 21 playable characters. It also featured 2 different what-if stories, which are beloved by Dragon Ball fans in such games. The gameplay is quite similar to the Budokai games, where 2 characters fight in 2D stages with different kicks, punches, ki blasts and special attacks. It featured some interesting mechanics such as the fatigue meter, drama scenes and of course ultimate attacks for all characters. Unfortunately, we never saw a sequel to Burst Limit, since 1 year later in 2009 Bandai Namco took over the distribution rights from Atari for Dragon Ball games and started developing their own game series.
9.
Number 9 on this list is Dragon Ball Xenoverse, which was released in February 2015 by Bandai Namco and developed by DIMS. It was the first different iteration of a 3D arena brawler Dragon Ball game, which didn't follow the original story but adapted different elements of the Dragon Ball Online MMORPG and created an own story out of it. It received a Metacritic score of 72 and a user score of 74, which leads to a final rating of 73.2. The successor, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 from 2016, only achieved a final score of 72.2, and therefore Xenoverse 1 is the game on this list. The story of Xenoverse lets you create a time patroller out of different races from the Dragon Ball universe to support future Trunks and the Kai of Time in their task to stop the demons Towa and Mira from changing key points of the Dragon Ball history. The game is played from Content City, a hub city which lets you choose your next quests and customize your own character. Battles are set in full 3D environment with different levels which can be accessed through portals in the large maps. You can also go with existing Dragon Ball characters into the fight, but one of the unique gameplay mechanics was the customization of your own character by learning moves and transformations from the Dragon Ball cast. The game offered different game modes and with all DLCs 58 playable characters which had different variations to them with different moves. In addition, as mentioned, the own character had a lot of potential for different playstyles and was of the most beloved features by the community. Although Xenoverse doesn't rank that high on this list, it is one of the most successful Dragon Ball series, which already sold with both versions over 10 million units, and Xenoverse 2 is still played to date and received over 10 additional DLC packs.
8.
Number 8 is Dragon Ball Origins, an action-adventure developed by Game Republic and published by Atari in November 2008 for the Nintendo DS. With a Metacritic score of 78 and a user rating of 76, it achieves a final rating of 76.8. The sequel, Dragon Ball Origins 2, was released 2 years later in 2010, but only achieved a final score of 73. Dragon Ball Origins covers the first 2 sagas of the original Dragon Ball, the Emperor Pilaf and the Tournament saga, but with some alterations to the original source material. The game is played with an overhead view, and Goku is the only playable character, which is controlled with the stylus from the Nintendo DS. The main goal is to get Goku to the end of a stage by defeating enemies and solving small puzzles. Fight is done either barehanded or with a power pole, and all actions of the game are controlled as mentioned with the stylus, what can be quite tricky and is not as intuitive as it may sound. But it has been received rather positive from fans and critics, well enough for a sequel to be made. Which in my opinion was better, especially since there was the possibility to choose to control Goku with the normal controls and not with the stylus in Dragon Ball Origins 2.
7.
The RPG Dragon Ball Fusions was released in November 2016 for the Nintendo 3DS, published by Bandai Namco and developed by Gambarion. The game achieves the 7th spot on the list with a Metacritic score of 72 and a user score of 80, what summarizes to a final score of 76.8 like Origins, but thanks to the higher user rating, Fusions gets a higher spot. Dragon Ball Fusions takes one of the most iconic and known technique of Dragon Ball and makes a full game out of it, Fusion. In this game, you assume the role of a customizable protagonist Tekka, which summons Shenron together with his friend and rival Pinnick, what leads to the greatest martial art tournament ever, and the story unfolds from there. The gameplay features the creation of the own character, team building and collecting different Dragon Ball characters to fuse them and create new unique characters to use in battle. Based on this premise, there are a lot of playable characters, even a good amount of non-canon and never seen in anime or manga before. Since the premise and the game itself are quite unique, this game is not something for everyone. But if you still own a Nintendo 3DS, you should definitely give it a try.
6.
Dragon Ball Z Attack of the Saiyans is a turn-based RPG developed by Monolith Soft and published by Bandai Namco in November 2009 for the Nintendo DS. It manages to take the 6th place on this list with a Metacritic score of 73, a user rating of 80 and therefore a final rating of 77.2. The storyline in Attack of the Saiyans begins with the Dragon Team training for the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament and ends with the battle against Vegeta. The game consists of 3 main modes: the map of the Dragon World, the area maps and the battle mode. In the turn-based combat battle mode, your active team will consist of the first 3 members of your roster, and each character has set attacks and techniques for you to choose from. With time, you can unlock new skills and make the base attributes of each character stronger. Each character also has a Rage Gauge, which allows the activation of a sparking mode as soon as it is full. In this mode, every character can execute an ultimate attack, or, if 2 or more characters' gauges are full, they can execute a sparking combo together at the same target. Dragon Ball Z Attack of the Saiyans was met with fair criticism with gaming critics, complimenting the battle system, its visuals and its ability to stay true to the series. It would go on to be the 3rd best selling video game in Japan that year.
5.
Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure was developed by Dimps, a quite known developer around Dragon Ball games, and published by Banpresto. It is an action platformer and was released in June 2006 for the Game Boy Advance. With a Metacritic score of 75 and a user score of 84, it manages to get the 5th place on this list with a final rating of 80.4. Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure follows the original Dragon Ball story from the first meeting of Goku and Bulma up to the final fight of Goku against King Piccolo. It also offers a variety of game modes: the story mode, which is split into platforming, Flying Nimbus and then 1 vs 1 levels, and one-on-one mode where you could play the game with over 30 characters in a fighting game style, a versus mode for up to 2 players to play against each other, and an extra mode that was unlocked after finishing the story mode and different minigames set in the Dragon Ball lore. Especially the mix of 2D platformers and the in the quest implemented 1 vs 1 mode for boss battles was very unique and made a lot of fun.
4.
Number 4 is Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku 2, the second Legacy of Goku action RPG, which was developed by Webfoot Technologies and published by Atari for the Game Boy Advance. It achieves a final score of 81, based on a Metacritic score of 75 and a user score of 85. The first Legacy of Goku game only has a final score of 62, and the third and last game, Bio's Fury, a final score of 75.8. In the Legacy of Goku 2, you will follow the Android and Cell Games arc, starting with the timeline of Future Trunks until the final battle against Perfect Cell in the Cell Games. There are also several side quests, and even Cooler appears in a side mission in New Namek. The gameplay is still similar to the first Legacy of Goku game, where you move around in large 2D environments, interacting with objects and characters, fighting enemies with melee and key attacks, and customizing your character based on different stats RPG style. After completely different events in the storyline, some of the characters even become the ability to transform as seen in the anime or manga. It offers with Goku, Gohan, Future Trunks, Piccolo, Vegeta and Hercule 6 different playable characters and a lot of interesting and non-canon side quests.
3.
If you ask Dragon Ball fans about their most beloved Dragon Ball game, they mostly will say either Budokai Tenkaichi 3 or Budokai 3. Well, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is our number 3 in this list, developed by Spike Chunsoft and published by Atari in November 2007. It received an average Metacritic rating of 79 and an incredible high user rating of 89, which leads to a final rating of 82.6. Tenkaichi 1 received 78.6, 2 80.8, and even the Tenkaichi Tag Team on the PlayStation Portable had a high final rating with 77.4. But since we are only counting down the best of the series, Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is the one that makes the list. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 offered a lot of game modes, including a Dragon History mode with the series story from the Saiyan Saga up to the GT Saga, including the movies and several what-if scenarios. The Ultimate Battle modus, a World Tournament mode, different customization options for characters and versus modes even came on top. With over 161 playable characters, if you consider all transformations and versions, it also offers one of the biggest character rosters to date around a Dragon Ball game. The gameplay itself offers some new fighting mechanics to the already established 3D arena fighting gameplay from the previous Budokai Tenkaichi games, and is therefore considered the best game of the Budokai Tenkaichi franchise by fans. What is actually a common trope from the Dragon Ball games, that the first opens up new potentials, the second kind of sucks, and the third and last one is the best from all three. But a part 4 has never been released in none of the existing Dragon Ball game franchises up to date.
Two.
Number 2 is a rather new and my personal favorite Dragon Ball game to date, Dragon Ball FighterZ. Developed by the kings of anime fighting games Arc System Works and published by Bandai Namco in January 2018, Dragon Ball FighterZ is the first Dragon Ball game to be first a fighting game and second a Dragon Ball game. Especially due to this fact, it has received a lot of praise in the fighting game community, but is quite criticized by the Dragon Ball community. With a Metacritic score of 87 and a user score of 80, it achieved a final rating of 82.8. The story mode of Dragon Ball FighterZ tells a unique story, where the players takes control of the Dragon Ball characters and they are aware of it. It offers 3 arcs, the good arc named Super Warrior arc, the Enemy Warrior arc where you are Frieza as the main character, and the Android 21 arc where you play Android 18 and 21 as the main characters. Overall, the story is not that appealing and definitely the weaker part of Dragon Ball FighterZ. The main focus lies in the 3 vs 3 gameplay mechanics and in fighting locally and online against other players. Dragon Ball FighterZ gameplay borrows concepts from several other fighting games, primarily the Marvel vs Capcom series control scheme and team mechanics with 3 primary attack buttons and 1 unique action button plus a few others. It offers auto combos and easy to use special and super moves, what makes the entry to newcomers to fighting games very low. But it also offers enough variety and mechanics for more veteran players based on team composition and skill level, what made Dragon Ball FighterZ enter several official fighting game tournaments immediately after its release. Currently, Dragon Ball FighterZ is in its 2nd season and offers, including all DLC characters, 37 playable characters, and a 3rd season is not officially announced but very likely. Before we move on to the best rated Dragon Ball game, let's take a look at some honorable mentions that didn't make the top 10 list.
1.
Number 1 is, to most likely nobody's surprise since it didn't show up in the list until now, Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3. Developed by DIMS and published by Atari in November 2004, this Dragon Ball fighting game is mentioned up to today as one of the best Dragon Ball games ever. It manages to take the first spot in this list with a final rating of 84.2 based on a Metacritic score of 77 and a user score of 89, the same as Budokai Tenkaichi had. Other iterations of the Budokai series, such as number 1 with a rating of 74.8, 2, 75.6 and even Shin Budokai on the PSP with 76 were all rated lower. Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 is as mentioned a 2D fighting game with 3D cel-shaded graphics with a major focus on different characters of the Dragon Ball series and to reproduce fights that fit the style of the anime. While Budokai 1 had characters up to the Android Saga, Budokai 2 introduced the Buu Saga characters, and in Budokai 3 we have all previous characters and in addition, movie, GT and original Dragon Ball characters joined the roster. The gameplay mechanics have been optimized throughout the series, and Budokai 3 summarized the best of all games, with a very engaging and balanced fighting system. It offers 44 base characters and almost every known transformation to each character known from the series. The story is played in the Dragon Universe mode, where you free roam different worlds and you can experience the story from the Saiyan Saga up to the Buu Saga. It offers a high level of replayability, since depending on choices and events, you can see different fights and see different paths and battles depending on your character you choose to play with. Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 is rightly on the first place of this list, and to date a great Dragon Ball game that every Dragon Ball fan should play. And this is it, the current best Dragon Ball games released in the past 20 years. Was your favorite game in it, or did you miss it? Let me know in the comments, and also if there is any top 10 list that you would like me to cover in my next videos. I am the top 10 guy, and I hope we see us in my next video.